Did you play it? Glenn, did you play it?
Did I play Last of Us?
No, did you play the greatest game ever, Last of Us, HD Super Remix version?
No, I don't have a PS4 yet.
You gotta get it. You have to. Because you played it just like 60 days ago, now you have to buy it again.
Is it better because it's 60 frames per second?
I don't know, but here's the question. Is it fun? Is it fun?
I didn't find it especially so. That's mostly my big problem with it.
Let's ask McCallum. Rob, is it fun? Grandmaster.
What did you want to ask the Grand Wizard of Answers and Knowledge?
Okay. So, you never played Last of Us for PS3, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Now you have the super ultra 85,000 frames per second. You can see every hair on dude's beard.
I can see on boots.
Super Last of Us EX Turbo.
Exactly. It's like a Street Fighter name. Is it fun? Forget about the graphics. Is it fun? What do you think?
I just want to know, why do all the Assassin's Creed characters dress the same? That's what I want to know. What's going on with that?
Well, Glenn, I don't know. You tell me. I've only half played one of them. And
That's it. I'm out of here.
I've only half played all of them, actually.
There's not really a good reason. They are actually, in the early games at least, they make an effort to kind of point out that the whole like kind of hooded cloak is sort of passed down through the guild, as it were.
Boring.
But they stopped doing that.
Okay, you're not answering the question. Is Last of Us fun?
It depends on what your idea of fun is. My idea of fun is a game that plays at 60 frames per second on a Sony machine.
Do you know what my idea of fun is? It's Super Mario Brothers. So is it fun like that?
You are messed up, buddy. That is no definition of
with
fun.
With those awful 8-bit graphics, what are you thinking? It's not even HD, bro. What? Come at me.
I feel like I'm only getting part of the story here.
No, you've got the whole picture. Game of the year, 60 frames per second.
We were talking on the phone today about, because Rob just, he just purchased Last of Us for PS4, and everyone's just going on, oh man, the hair looks so realistic, their clothes like shake in the wind, and that's great, but I'm like, that's great, is it fun? And your answer was...
It's time for another Gamercast. I'm your host, Rob McCallum, alongside Glenn Stanway and Jay Bartlett. We're going to have some fun today, because this podcast is coming at you 60 frames per second. What is the new definition of fun? The new definition of fun in the internet age of gaming, 60 frames per second and 240 megahertz and a whole bunch of other stats that add up to, well, a fun experience.
Your hair looks incredible.
So anyways.
Your hair is blowing in the wind at 60 frames per second.
The detail in your hair is incredible.
Blowing hair is fun.
The game plays like plumbers don't wear ties, but that doesn't matter. Okay, let's go.
It's fun. Everything is fun when the numbers are higher.
Overrated.
High numbers means high fun. Doesn't it?
That's why Jaguar did so well, right?
Yeah.
Wow, we're picking
Probably
a fight
that's
today.
actually a pretty good example of what the thing sounded like when it turned on. I was like,
yeah, then you get that blood red screen. It was supposed to be Jaguar eyes, but it just went red.
It just went red, and that
was a good
system
indication of the career of the Jaguar. I'm feeling sassy today.
Yeah. I feel like we're going to be a little combative.
We have a pile of questions.
I like
and
that.
Of course,
I like it.
We've got two questions from our mainstays, our friends that sit at the end of the bar, Steve and Ian.
Woo!
Of course.
What's up, boys? How are you?
Let's start with Steve. I have a question for the guys. Have you ever encountered a game that was entirely too hard or that you've never finished, and what was it? Depends on how high the frame rate was. If the frame rate wasn't high enough, I probably didn't put it on.
You're just going to beat that into the ground, aren't you?
I have plenty of games I've never finished.
Why did you not finish those games? And what's an example, Glenn?
Oh, God. Too many to list.
Great question.
I would say I probably have finished less games than I have not finished. What's a good example of one?
You have finished less games than you have not finished. I got
What,
you. Okay.
One off the top of my head, Ninja Gaiden for the Xbox. I never finished that.
Fallout 3.
Yeah, but you didn't like Fallout 3.
Yeah, but I tried really hard.
No. We're talking about like it's too difficult. I just
No,
can't
well,
do
hold
it.
on. I wanted to make sure I understood the question correctly. You didn't games. He said games you just didn't finish or were too difficult. So is it two separate things?
Both.
Does it have
Yeah,
to be
so it's
too
kind of a
difficult, and
both.
that's why I didn't
Okay.
finish it?
So Fallout 3.
Lots of NES games.
Why Fallout 3 though? What didn't you like about Fallout 3? Because I'm a huge Fallout fan, and you despise it.
I am not a big fan of anything in the vein of the Bethesda kind of first person RPG stuff though. So to be fair, that's
So
less
all of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's less about Fallout and specifically about Fallout 3 and everything afterwards. But I hate first person games that give the appearance of first person combat, but there's still actually invisible dice rolling to determine whether or not you hit and stuff. It drives me crazy.
And we're not necessarily talking about first-person shooters.
Not at
Like
all.
Metroid.
No, that's different. Because when
We're
I
just
shoot
talking
something
about
in Metroid, I
first-person
hit it.
games.
Yeah,
Okay.
and in our get
Jay's
this
looking
right.
away.
So my ability to shoot in Fallout doesn't have any bearing on my actual damage that I'm doing to a creature, right?
Because they want you to do the VATS.
Aha!
They want you to freeze the frame.
But then
Do
you
know
give
what I
me
mean?
an incredibly limited amount of ammo, and I still spend ammo when I'm attacking stuff, and that's BS.
But do you know why they give you a
There's
limited
never-
amount of ammo?
Glenn,
Because it's
Glenn,
a
sorry to jump
post-apocalyptic
in.
world.
Is it at 60 frames per second?
No.
No.
Well,
That's-
if you had limited
oh,
ammo at
that's why I
60
didn't
frames per
finish it.
second, you could shoot more accurately.
Okay, let me throw a
You
few
could
out
shoot
there.
a lot more accurately if it was
I-
at 60 frames per second. That's all
I
I'm saying.
beat Ninja Gaiden 2 on NES, but I never beat 1 or 3, so I have regrets about both of those. A few off the top of my head. Majora's Mask, which is one of my favorite Zeldas, and for whatever reason, I've never finished it. Those are a couple off the top of my head.
I never finished
All
Metroid
right.
Prime 3. I'll admit that.
Oh, you're going to get a letter from me in next week.
I
I'm
finished
sure.
I finished the first two, but I never finished Metroid Prime 3. And I did finish Metroid Other M for reasons that I don't think need to be explained.
Did your wrists get tired of waggling?
No.
Oh, strong wrists.
It was unrelated to the waggling wrist syndrome.
The only game that comes to mind in recent era is the XCOM games. Just because by the time you get to the end, if you haven't built your team perfectly and outfitted them, you stand essentially zero chance at taking down the final kind of enemy ship. So I've got to the final ship, I
Wow.
just haven't beat it. Now, they did release an add-on disc that has the whole game and plus all the DLC involved, and I'm halfway through that. I basically played through all the extra content, and I'm sure if I carried on the new Soldier editions, I might have a better shot at beating the end. It's just one of those things where I don't really have 20 hours to put back into it, even though it's probably my favorite game on the PS3. But that's about the only one that was just too hard for me to ever finish.
Dude, you just
and it
hit
didn't even. It ran at 30 frames.
As soon as you said to me I didn't build my characters right, I thought of the perfect game, which for me would be Final Fantasy VII. I am still at the save point outside Sephiroth's cave, and I didn't level Knights of the Round properly, which is one of the spells you get. So I would go in there, and he would do a spell, I think, that would destroy the universe, and it literally one-shotted my other two guys and left Cloud with 1 hit point. So that the whole, I think I clocked in 78 hours, I think I checked, a few months ago, all for nothing. I tried to start it again.
That's the other reason, incidentally, that I really hate the Bethesda first-person RPGs.
But Square makes Final Fantasies.
I know. I'm just saying that's the same reason I hate those RPGs. Because they give you the illusion of choice, and they're like, here's your great smorgasbord. You create your character, you can customize how high his nose is on his face, you can customize his eye color, you can make your character anybody you want to be, you can pick any class you want to be. But if you don't pick a combat class, then God help you, because you're not going to be able to play this game.
This isn't a debate show.
Is
but
this a
that's-
common thing, by the way? Is this a common thing that if you mess up those first steps early on in a game with your character building, then you're kind of screwed in the later levels? How often has this happened to you guys across the board?
I don't think it's that common, but I think it's a poor, it's a poor game for which you can actually say, I built my character wrong, ergo I failed. Like, I think if you're the game designer and that's a possibility in your game, you need to design it better.
I could see that. I think the world record speed run in Fallout 3 is like 15 minutes or something. That's with glitches, and the guy only uses his fists. He powers up everything into hand-to-hand combat, and he's one-shotting enemies. So you can beat up guys with your hands. You can really put all your combat skills into your hands if you want. But there's bazookas and guns. Like, who's gonna just want to do that?
Look at World of Warcraft. Like, you have your skill tree, right? And there's generally like 3 specs or builds for any given character class. At least 3 specs you can build. And none of those specs are useless. And some of those specs are going to work better in other situations than they are. Like, if I'm a solo player, I'm probably going to spec one way. If I'm raiding all the time, I'm going to spec another. But none of them are useless. And you can always ultimately respec if you need to.
It's a little different though, because you're picking. Let's say you were a hunter,
yeah.
And WoW, okay, so you're gonna spec into the tree of the role you want to do. Where in Fallout, you're trying to get to the end of the game, and you kind of want to do what you want. But if you spec into, I can't remember the different trees in WoW now, but it's like one is the tracking tree.
Well, it'll be different depending on the class,
tree.
Right.
But for hunters, one's the pet tree, one's the tracking tree, and so on. So it's a little different, but I see your point.
I don't know if we answered that question.
We just kind of rambled, but
that was a fun diversion.
No, I think we got to somewhere more interesting. I mean, we all have games that we haven't beat because they've been too hard. I guess the other thing is, one of you guys said it, and maybe we'll get to it a little bit later in the outline, is how much time do you really give a game? And this is a question from me to me and you guys. How much time do you guys give a game because you want to like it so bad? Like, what's the window on that game?
Fallout 3 is probably the most time I've spent with a game trying really hard to like it and ultimately not being successful. Like, I gave that game the better part of a week, like probably 4 or 5 days of like a few hours a night kind of thing, trying to see the game that everybody else was seeing, and just ultimately just didn't get there. And at some point I just had to, I think around the 17,000th time, my bloody dog got killed by a stupid fire ant, so I was like, enough of this crap, and I threw in the towel.
Yeah, I will say the Elder Scrolls series, and I don't want to get any hate mail for that, but
it's coming now.
That is a game I know it is a classic series, but I've tried Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim, and I cannot get into it. You were talking about how you didn't like the fake first-person shooting in Fallout.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I don't like in those games is the combat where you're hand-to-hand. The whole time, are you not running backwards the whole time? You are always running backwards.
Yeah, and again, to like, I want just to kind of further what Jay was saying. This is not me commenting on the quality of those games. I realize I am in the minority. Like, I realize people love those games, and more power to them. Like, I am not saying they're bad games by any stretch of the imagination. They're just not my cup of tea for a number of reasons. But
what about you, Rob? What do you think?
To be honest, for me at first it's like, okay, I've just spent $60. I got to justify it. That's kind of how I approach it. If I'm not like hooked right away, if I'm not hooked within that first hour,
I agree.
Then it's like,
I agree.
I feel like I've got to give it a stronger chance because I've dropped a good chunk of change. If it's like a digital only or like an indie game, then that's a little bit different because usually the price is substantially less. But I usually got to give it at least 4 or 5 hours, which is an extraordinary amount of time when you think of it as a whole. But like an hour here, an hour there, that's usually what I drop into it. I don't have any specific examples. I am kind of already grinding through Last of Us on PlayStation 4. I'm kind of not super in love with it. I got some questions about that later on, and we can kind of get to that. Even though it runs at 60 frames per second, it's still a grind.
The beard hair is unreal, real. Did you guys ever play Final Fantasy 13?
No, I avoided it for many of the reasons you're probably about to vocalize.
Rob?
Is that like X-113-6A- PlayStation 4 60 frames?
Yes, it is. So that game is very linear. Okay, so you're just going down corridors, and your path is pretty much chosen for you until you get to the average time amount is about 20 hours into it, and then the game opens up into kind of the open world thing. Ooh. And I told a lot of people, I'm like, I can't do that. I did, I think, 4 hours, and I just didn't like it. and they're like, "Oh man, you got to wait about the 20-hour mark." The game opens up. I'm like,
ridiculous.
20-hour mark.
Yeah, but you know what?
It should take me 20 hours to fall in love with a game. That's
I
ridiculous.
say the same thing to you, though, right? I've said the same thing to you about World of Warcraft. Oh, it's so different once you get to level 70 and 80. It's a brand new game. All you got to do is get to level 70, 80 or 90 or whatever the level cap is now. All you got to do.
It's a different game. The end game is different than the grind to get to the end, is what I meant.
Well, what does that tell you? Shouldn't you just start with the end game? Shouldn't you just start with the
first of all, you don't know how to use your character, and second of all, you don't know the game mechanics, so why would they start you at the end game?
Well, couldn't they like fast track you just a little bit to get to the best part?
You know what? I think that's almost what they've done now, and a lot of fans are up in arms because it's a little too easy to get to the end now in WoW.
Well, if it gets to the best part, then that's all that matters, right? All right, you guys strapped in? We're ready for Ian's message, essay, expose, manifesto.
Right. Can I take notes?
Of course. You can. Ian and Steve still vying for number one. We had another individual on our Facebook page, Joe, who used to live in Vegas, now lives in Boston. I think he might try to throw his hand in at the number one contest because there's so much on the line. Oh, hiya, mateys. Captains Rob, Glenn, and Jedi Knight. Jay could actually change his middle name to Die, his last name to Knight. Thank me later. Did you follow that?
Jedi Knight. I like that.
Oh, I see what he did there.
Cheers, Ian. That's awesome, dude.
You see what he did there? At 30 frames per second. I am writing to you from the front desk of a ship today. It's not at sea or anything. I was just walking past it, and it seemed like a nice perch to write to you from. So these 2-week intervals seem to be getting shorter. Or have you changed the weekly episodes already? Have you changed 2 weekly episodes already? No, we haven't. Still bi-weekly. Firstly, I would like to say a big thank you to my fan and yours, Russell Bland. It's a little bit mean to treat a fan of the show as though he might be my own creation, or as Glenn stated, a split of my personality. Anyways, Russell, if you are listening, and I know you are, thank you, and please send in some pics of baby Ian. Well, anyways, that's enough about me, or it is until I get to my own syndicated spin-off show. Apparently he's vying for a spin-off. So I know Glenn and Jay have both had birthdays recently, so happy birthday to those two. Interesting fact. Jay shares his birthday with Mark Hamill. Jay shares his birthday with Mark Hamill, and Glenn shares his birthday with Matt Lauer. Coincidence? I don't think so. Okay, what's next?
Also Kevin Smith.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Okay, what's next? Oh, yeah, let's recap on last week's show, as I felt a few feathers become ruffled at some of your comments. So I hate to recap the dirty, filthy, disgusting world of region coding, but I need to pull you guys up on something, and especially Rob. Whilst discussing the fine point I raised, I believe that Jay touched on the point of certain game series being only released in certain areas based on region trends, but this is exactly the point of no region coding. Rob then said yes for physical releases as there are costs and jobs, but all those things already exist. The games I want to play exist and they're already in shops in Japan, only they won't play on my machine. So the job cost, everything is still there and I can go online and buy them, but my stupid machine won't play them. And then for some argument of niche markets, that doesn't come into it because anybody can make up their own mind about what it is they wish to play. So let me just clarify, Ian. When you do region coding, you've got to hire other people to make sure that they play in all the regions. It's not just like a magic switch you push. So there you go on that. This crap makes me so angry, and it's in this stupid day and age. Okay, guys. Sorry, I'm done now. Oh, yeah. And to Glenn, as he mentioned not wanting to play Mass Effect on the Wii U, as he already had on other systems. Well, the Wii U version is actually the best console port in existence, as it was programmed using the graphic patch textures from the PC version. None of the others were, and yes, it still does utilize the gamepad screen for your weapons and pickups. Glenn, any thoughts on that?
I will play it again on the Wii U when I decide to play it a second time. I did not know that.
All
That's cool information to have, actually.
Okay, my questions this week are: 1. If you could use the Jedi mind trick only once in your entire life, what would you use it for and why? Jay? Glenn? Jay? Glenn?
Hang on. That's a tough one, man. I can't just pop one out. Let me think.
I have a lot of moral dilemmas with the concept of actually using the Jedi mind trick.
Don't lie.
I don't.
Okay, if I could use the Jedi mind trick just once, it would be to tell Dave Grohl that we were long lost brothers and he needs to come home immediately to London, Ontario so we can jam and form the super group we all knew we had in us. There you go.
Wow, Dave Grohl over Mark Hamill. Interesting.
I would use it to convince Rob that he likes Metroid Prime.
Well, that would be a wasted mind trick. Number 2, second
win the
question.
battle.
If you could have any ship, car, or craft from any video game, what would it be and why?
Do Star Wars games count?
It says any craft from any video game, what would it be and why? He says his is the Batmobile. So obviously you can do Star Wars.
So I guess, yeah, that stuff counts. Any craft.
I would choose the tank-like vehicle from Blaster Master.
It's pretty cool.
And then drive to work in it, crushing anyone in my path.
Okay. Though I am the biggest Luke Skywalker fan in the world, I would have to go with the Millennium Falcon, just because it would be a party. So, yeah, I would pick the Falcon.
I think I'd take the DeLorean from Back to the Future.
That was a close second. I was thinking about it, man. I was thinking about it. What about the Ghostbuster car, no?
I was thinking about Ecto 1 too. That was
Ecto
my
1.
second. That was my second. Even those are not really video game related in origin.
Well,
I
they
think
are.
it makes sense.
If Ian says the Batmobile and that counts, I think the Falcon counts.
Well, heaven forbid anybody disagree with Ian, right? I just thought I would let you guys know that it is 252 hours until I purchase my Wii U. So look out then for more trivia in love for the new system. My mom says hi and is thinking of getting Jay's face tattooed on her left leg as I am getting Glenn and Rob's on mine. He spells mom M-U-M, by the way.
That's right.
He capitalizes the U. So
I would like to give a shout out to Ian's mom. Cheers, love, and thanks for listening. And I also want to comment, even though it wasn't directed at me, about the Mass Effect thing. I would be inclined, Ian, my friend, to play Mass Effect if I could play the trilogy. But to start the third part and act and not be able to bring Shepard through the other two, I think is a crime.
What I want to know is how he actually knows it's the best port if he hasn't got a Wii U yet. He clearly hasn't played it.
Well, he's using his knowledge of the graphic patch textures from the PC.
So what you're saying is very
Play
much
the
like
best.
The Last of Us Remastered. It is the best because of the technical prowess displayed.
We'll
in
get
its
there.
Performance.
We will get there. All right, he says, Land ahoy! Arg! Love Ian, the number that comes before 2. P.S. If I ever steal a spaceship, do not get on with me. I dreamt this the other day, but we all crashed and died.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, you're not selling that, man.
All right, so Steve and Ian have chimed in once again. Fun as always. Here's some questions from me to me for us. Last of Us was recently re-released for PlayStation 4. Is this milking the franchise, as others have exclaimed? What do you guys think has been milked too much in the past?
I think
So is this overkill on a game that was proclaimed by, I don't know, 200 different sites and publications as Game of the Year? Is
Yes.
re-releasing it on next gen too much?
I'm sorry to cut you off there.
No, go ahead, man.
I don't understand it. I'm not a graphics whore. Okay, do you know what I mean? So I don't understand the need to play this again. And people are arguing that it's the Game of the Year edition of Last of Us, which it most certainly is. But it's only on PS4. Now, if there was the same Game of the Year edition released on the PS3, I could almost get it. But, I mean, they're re-releasing GTA 5 again. I just bought that game. Last of Us, I just bought it last year. Do you know what I mean? So I'm kind of... Like the HD remakes from games 10 years ago, I can kind of understand. But like a game I just bought almost to the day a year ago is... Yeah, I don't like that trend.
I think it's one thing when it's an HD remake. I think it's another thing when you're re-releasing these games and they're slightly HDer. It really is. It is really ridiculous.
Is that correct terminology there?
It is now. Okay. I think it was one thing last fall when the Xbox One and the PS4 launched, and they had a PS4 version of something and a PS3 version of something, and they were both. And there was a game. It was the same
DC
game. And
Injustice, for example.
Yeah, and it got released at the same time on both platforms, and it was just so that if somebody had one platform, they could get it, and somebody had the other platform, they could get it. And if you had the next-gen system and you wanted, Assassin's Creed 4 to look a little bit better, maybe have a couple of extra effects and things like that, then cool, you got it on that. But I think this stuff with them re-releasing these really, really, really recently released games, they've announced a couple of other things too recently, and I'm totally drawing a blank on what they are now, but there's a couple of really egregious ones too. But
GTA 5, I mean, they just announced another remake of Resident Evil, the first one.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, they redid it on the GameCube, and it looks to this day fantastic.
Yeah, but it's not in HD, so I can.
Yeah, and I think that gap is okay enough to do that.
That's what I'm saying. I would argue for that too.
I want to go down a little bit down the road there in the past and go, to my friend Conker, where he was 2001 on the 64, and then 2005 on the Xbox. And while it looked 20 times better, even then, back then, I was like, I just bought this game 4 years ago. Like, am I really going to buy it again? Because, you could see his fur, like individual hairs now. Like, come on.
Well, yeah, Glenn, to your point, I think the whole idea of them re-releasing Last of Us is to allow people that bought a PlayStation 4 that didn't have a PS3 a chance to play it. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the PS3 library, and it's one game I didn't get, and because I heard that it was coming on PS4, I knew I would wait for that.
Yeah, and I get that too, and I'm not arguing against that. It just seems like it really does seem like they're milking stuff, and it's just what's wrong with the PS3 version, I guess, is what
I can tell you. I can tell you. Here we go. I can tell you.
What's the frame difference?
30 frame difference between cutscenes and gameplay on a good day. On a good day.
Whatever, man.
So
give me the 8-bit
seamless.
version of Last
I mean,
of Us.
I don't know, because I haven't played the PS3 version. It's seamless. The PS4 version also does include the DLC Left Behind, or whatever the hell that is. I haven't got into that yet. But so it is kind of nice to have it all packed into one physical disc instead of having to download the other stuff. So that is nice. But
wouldn't it make it a great selling point for the PS3, which is still doing amazing, by the way, just to bring a greatest hits Game of the Year edition of Last of Us and saying, hey, you can only get this on PS3. Would that not work too?
But companies are, especially like PlayStation, where they've changed all their designs to look the same. You see the new PS3 games, they're all blue now, like PS4.
Yeah.
They want to push the new stuff because they want to make their money back on the new stuff. They're not trying to sell old stuff to you. No, they're not like Xbox, who said, if you don't want an Xbox, get an Xbox One, get a 360. There's lots of those.
Let me throw this out to you guys then. What do you think about the Master Chief Collection, which is Halo 1 to 4, only on Xbox One?
Not
interested.
What
do you think about that? No? Why
I'm not interested. No. This is probably more personal preference. Just not a huge Halo fan. Again, this comes back to first-person shooting, and where most of the game's life is online multiplayer, and I don't... As cool as that saga is, I'm just not into it. I don't like the first-player game enough to like it.
Yeah, I'm not a gigantic Halo fan either. I will probably get it, because there are a couple of people in my household who are Halo fans. I think there are a couple of differences that come to mind, and one is that, especially with Halo 1 and Halo 2, there's some pretty big visual differences there.
But they already did Halo 1 2 years ago on 360. But do you know what I mean? It's like they've already redone it, now they're going to redo it.
But I think also because all 4 games are in one box, like there's a value proposition you could argue for. Absolutely. Too. So
everyone's going gaga over Halo 2, which is arguably the best in the series, and they've shown the new cutscenes with Sergeant Johnson and the Arbiter, and they look great. They do look great, but it's like, again, it's like, Rob, it's like remastering these movies or
Ted Turner colorization.
Do you know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know.
I understand. So the next thing I wanted to throw at you guys out there is, I got tons of people telling me Last of Us is the best game ever, or a game not to be missed. What game stands out as games not to be missed? And when, if at all, do you guys think a game shouldn't be missed, and what was the result, assuming you follow it up? Have you ever disagreed with that? Did you guys ever have someone say, oh, you got to play this game? And what was the result when you did play it? So what stands out as games not to be missed, and when's the last time somebody told you guys you got to play this game, and what was the result, assuming you followed up?
I have definitely played games that I was not in agreement with the vast majority of reviews on, and that swings both ways. I've had games that I liked better than a lot of people did, and I've had games that I liked a lot less than a lot of other people did. I think it's tricky because to me, it's like I can really, really be into a game and I can really hardly suggest it, but at the end of the day, there's no accounting for preferences. And without trying to beat a dead horse, I think Metroid Prime is a really good example of that with the three of us. Like we have three people who have very, very different opinions on the quality of that game, and it's just our preferences, right? Like it's no different than a film or an album. Like I can passionately argue you go see a film or listen to a band, and you may just not find it to be to your taste, you know.
I think it is a bit different, though. Sorry, Jay, I'll let you. I think it is different than movies and music, because movies and music, it's a passive activity. You just sit there and watch it, and it only lasts 2 hours at most. You know, maybe a movie's a bit longer, like The Hobbit or something, where it's 3. But games, if you got to get to the 20-hour mark before it really opens up, then that's different. Jay, 60 frames per second.
Much to the chagrin of Glenn here, I'm going to say, right off the top of my head would be Metal Gear 4, which everyone swore that was not only visually the best looking game, but story-wise as well.
I'm not going to disagree with you, man.
Okay, I just know you're a huge Metal Gear fan.
I am,
all,
but
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I
watched Metal Gear 4 for the majority of the time, and it's one of my big problems with all these games nowadays. It's like, I don't want to sit there and watch a movie. I would watch a movie, and Metal Gear, I shut it off after about an hour. I was done with it. And I didn't think the game
the hardest
controlled,
part I'm having. Yeah.
The game didn't control that well to me, and I just didn't find it engaging.
I finished Metal Gear Solid 4, so I did actually play through it, but do you guys mind me giving MGS4 spoilers, or are we past the statute?
I don't know, the game's pretty new, so you might know. I'm just kidding.
Well, it's sitting still shrink wrapped on my shelf, but whatever.
It's 2008, I think you're good.
Anybody who's played it knows there's a character who shows up at the end of the game, and it's supposed to be like a big reveal. And I was playing it, and it's like one of those things where like I had to work the next morning, and I was trying to. It was it wasn't super late at night, but I was trying to finish the game before I went to bed. And I'm like, I'm really, really close, so I'm going to finish it, and then I'm going to go to bed. And I finished it, and then this cutscene just keeps going and going and go, like to the point where literally out loud I was like, "Shut the hell up! Just shut up! Shut up and die already! Just finish the game."
Yeah.
Just end so I can go to bed.
I've watched part of the ending, and I was even watching it.
And I mean, I finished it, but it was like, and I'm not going to say that there weren't parts of that game that I had some fun with, but I mean, largely, it's incredibly overrated in my opinion. It really, really is.
I'm dealing with the same thing in Last of Us, Glenn. It's like I get these super long cutscenes that I watch, and then it's like, okay, finally it's time to play, and the play to watch ratio is a little out of whack in favor of watching. So I'm sitting there like scavenging every area I can, because I actually get to control the characters, and then I'm getting all these audio hints. Oh, maybe we should look at this ladder over here. I'm getting these dings and chimes and these on-screen notifications. Like, I don't know what the hell to do, but I just don't want to sit for another 10 minutes. Yeah. Just don't want to sit for another 10 minutes to hear a story that, sorry everybody out there, it's not doing it for me. Like, oh, people are saying that they were really moved by the story, and some people were tearing up. Like, I hope both of these characters die, and I'm not going to miss them. So.
Ooh, jeez.
Jay, go ahead. Don't spoil it, but I want to.
No, I'm just gonna say it's from
it's
from the creators of Uncharted, and Uncharted is a series I totally love, and I think I haven't played a lot of The Last of Us, but I love Nathan Drake, and I loved watching him and Sully and all their little interactions together. So for me, it was different. But even by the time we got to the third game, you start as like in Nathan's past, and you're the child Nathan. And I got 20 minutes into it. I'm like, you know what? No, I am done, man. I don't want to watch this game. I want to play it.
I was so glad to hear you say that, Rob, because I am one of the few people I know who is not in love with that game. And that's good to hear. And I don't want to take anything away from the game or anybody who likes it, because, I mean, I think all these publications that made it their game of the year, totally justified, and I don't argue with it at all. I'm so frustrated because I was not able to see the game everybody else saw with that game. And it frustrates me because I don't know why, but I mean, there's so many things that are great about that game. Naughty Dog does better character animation than anybody in the business. The characters look incredible. The acting, physically, vocally, is outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can
and
see
it's
why
even
people
better
would,
at 60 frames per second.
I'm sure
it's
it
even
is.
better at 60 frames per second.
And I can see where people would get really emotionally invested in that game, but I had two major issues with it. The first one is I didn't find it fun. I found it really trying to play, just because of the emotional weight and because of the game mechanics. Like I found like when other people were in the house with me, I couldn't play it. I had to wait until people left because I couldn't kind of get into a headspace to play the game unless I wasn't getting interrupted or there wasn't stuff going on around me. And that's not a problem I have with games very often. And the second was I found that as much as they tried to drive home a really serious story in a really adult tone and a really mature tone, and as much as they tried to straddle that line between film and game, the gamey parts of the game really pulled me out of the narrative. Like, it just felt too video gamey.
So would you almost want to just watch like a CG story?
I think I would have rather seen it as a film in the first place.
Well, you're going to get to see it as a film.
I am,
This
yeah.
week, Sony just greenlit it. Sony just greenlit it this week, not to date the episode, as a film. So
sweet.
everybody that didn't want to play the 10 minutes of gameplay on that disc get to watch the 90-minute movie, like the rest of us.
The rest of us, not the last
I
of
had
us,
so much
the rest
trouble
of
with
us.
like the insta-death and like... There's the one scene really
don't
early
even get
on.
me started about some of these characters and the rules. Oh, it touches you, you're dead. I don't care
Okay,
how pretty it looks.
hang on.
You're
Let me
dead.
interrupt here, Rob. So it is a video game, and we do play video games for fun. So was it fun?
It's at 60 frames per second, so it's got to be fun.
Answer
The
the
next
damn
question I got for you guys: do certain games have a window or like a lifespan? I mean, we've talked before how Call of Duty lasts a year, and then you've got to start all over again. Is
Yep.
Titanfall still awesome, or have we already switched to
Nope.
thinking about Destiny? You know, have I missed the window for Last of Us?
Those are really different
know?
games you just compared, though.
However, Last of Us does have a really big online community, and actually the multiplayer. I was watching a bit of it on Twitch today. Excuse me. And it looks like a lot of fun. Games like Titanfall, where it's online only, absolutely there's a window. I can already tell when I log in, and it takes an extra 5 minutes to find a match. You know, yeah, of course there is. Sure.
I think that part of the reason why classic games, 2D games, age as well as they do is because the mechanics are really, really pure and really, really simple. And I think the challenge I find, especially with older 3D games, is that as you get into 3D games and you have graphic advancements and you have control advancements and you have mechanic advancements, it's really hard to play the third game in a series and then go back and play the first. Like, compare playing Resident Evil 4 to playing the original Resident Evil now. And just like how primitive Resident Evil, the original version of Resident Evil, is in literally every respect. Just in terms of how it plays, how you play it, how it controls, how it looks, how it sounds. Mm-hmm. And that's less of a problem to me with 2D games, because when you're dealing with 2D games, it's just, you play Mario. Mario is just platforming perfection, pure and simple. And I don't think it's just nostalgia. I think it's just the way the game controls. Anybody can still pick up that game for the first time today and play it and get what the intent was out of that game. Yeah. And I find that 3D games don't age nearly as gracefully. And that's why things like HD remakes and re-releases are not necessarily a bad thing. But it's I think it's a bigger issue with 3D games and newer titles, certainly.
You had the problem with Perfect Dark, where I mean that game's near and dear to me. But the 360 HD remake, the controls are still dated. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't control like a modern game, so you still have those problems.
And it's a different controller too. Let's not forget the input device is different, which is why like playing Mario on a PC is not the same as playing it on, you know, your NES, because you're not playing it with the same controller. It's different.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, even now, like if I decided I wanted to play an Assassin's Creed game right now, I would play 4. I would never go back and play the original game, because just from how far that series has come in terms of what you can do, it would be like missing one of my hands trying to play that game now. And that's what I mean. Like,
it's like you said with Zelda Wind Waker, right? It's like you said with Wind Waker, how you could speed things up. I forget the specific reference, but didn't you say like the Wii U version, it's like super fast to kind of go through things?
there's more options for fast travel and for getting places quicker than there were in the original Cube one, because that was a drawback of the original GameCube version of the game, right? Is the sailing could get really, really, really tedious. And games now, modern game design is don't make the game tedious. Give as many options for people as you can to keep people playing your game. But that's a good example of what I'm talking about. It's just that the mentality from game design definitely shifts from generation to generation and sequel to sequel too.
So why are companies, you guys think, like making these games? Call of Duty is a little bit different because it's a franchise that everybody knows. There's a new one coming out. It's almost like the first-person shooter Madden, like we've talked about. But something like Titanfall, which we'll probably get a sequel of, and maybe Destiny will go down the same road. Last of Us might be in the same category. Why are companies making these games that only last a year? Why are they like essentially creating something that has a lifespan?
I don't think they necessarily are. I think Call of Duty's a different animal than Last of Us in that respect. Like, I don't think Naughty Dog made Last of Us going, oh, well, this will have a shelf life.
Okay, but it's a story thing, right? Like, it's a story thing. Everybody knows once you know the end, except for when you get to multiplayer, and even multiplayer in Last of Us will get dated. But once you understand the ending of Last of Us, and sure, I know there's a lot of people that will play that story over and over and over again because they love it so much. God bless them. But seriously, there is a shelf life on a long narrative story like that for first players. You know, unless you're an achievement hunting horror and all that kind of stuff, which is cool, but I think there is a shelf life on Last of Us.
But I would argue that there's a different intent there than a Call of Duty game, because when they make a Call of Duty game, they are making it to be there for a year and then sell you another one the year after. And I don't think Naughty Dog says
why are companies doing that? Why are they doing that?
By this point...
Because they're trying to make your money every year.
But by this point, everyone who plays Call of Duty knows that they have a year.
Is that all right, though? Is that good? I mean, that's...
Well, they keep buying them, right? So if they keep making their... You know, they keep making the profits and everything each year, and each Call of Duty seems to outdo the last, except I think Ghosts didn't, but Black Ops 2 was huge. And it beat Black Ops 1. It beat Modern Warfare 3. So, I mean, they keep making them.
Speaking of Black Ops 2, did you guys see that the Wii U just got maps for that? Their version of Black Ops 2?
I didn't.
Interesting. Go ahead, Glenn. Sorry.
I was just going to say, like, I mean, from getting out of artistic intent or you know, morality or whatever you want to call it, if I gave you $20... and you knew that every year I was going to give you $20 at the same time of year, are you going to turn me down?
Yes.
Yeah, I see your point.
I'm not like,
because I feel bad for you.
From a business perspective, they're going to keep doing it because it's going to keep making them money, right or wrong, and good or bad. And I mean, I think most of us have agreed we have literally no interest in Call of Duty anymore.
But if you're talking about like what Rob said about The Last of Us, where there is a huge... I mean, it is a single-player game, and then the multiplayer is kind of like added extra, even though, like I said, the multiplayer has this huge community, which is great. Look at something like Titanfall, where I quit playing Titanfall because the minutes I was waiting in the lobby for games started to get bigger. And I have no option. I can't play Titanfall offline and practice with bots. I can't do that. So I know that, you know, do I want to get to the 10th generation, which is like level cap in Titanfall, which is going to... a huge investment in time. I don't want to do that because I'm scared eventually one day I'm going to go on and there's not going to be people to play with. So that's the end of that game, right?
What I hate about all this is honestly like a game drops and maybe it's the first week if they haven't done a lot of marketing. And to be honest, we all know game companies like film studios put so much money into marketing this game release, like a big event. Like if you're anybody and you want to be a somebody, you got to get Titanfall. It's like the Xbox One defining game. You got to get it. You got to get it. You know, they really push it as like the game to get. Not just Titanfall, but, you know, Last of Us, especially with a re-release and all these other games. Like, God, doesn't that bother you? It bothers me.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the way the industry is. And I don't know if it's just because we were kids, but, you know, they bring out Mega Mans. Like, it seemed like every 2 weeks there was a new Mega Man. And we just ate those up, and it was awesome.
Well, I mean, I think the other thing is, too, there's so few releases for those new consoles just yet that people are going to eat up anything you give them. It's not a hard sell to get somebody to buy that. I don't think it's a hard sell to get somebody to buy a PS4 version of Last of Us because, you know, what else are they going to play?
Yeah, and I'm not saying I'm not saying there's necessarily.
I'm just saying I think that's
with,
contributing to it with the new consoles.
There's not necessarily anything wrong with remakes.
I think
just,
gamers.
I think. I'm just
go ahead, Jay.
Go ahead. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with remakes in general, but this close to when the original release was, like we're talking about a year ago, in a month or so. You know, it came out at the end of June. That's too soon, man. You want me to shell out another $60? Do you know what I mean? Like that's just too soon. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think there's a little bit of responsibility on both sides of the fence. I think that gamers should know better than to shell out this kind of money so that it doesn't happen. And I think companies should, strive to create more and more, original content. I hate to say it, but Last of Us is a brand new IP. And I'm so glad that it's doing well and it has done well and got so many awards. But now they're whoring it out, and now you're going to get a movie, and now you're going to get a sequel, and it's like it just goes down the same path as Hollywood and the AAA game industry. We're just going to get more of the same over and over again. And I think as gamers, we got to take the responsibility on our own to stop buying that shit. We need something to play for our new boxes.
But to be on the side of Last of Us for a second, I mean, the sequel won't be for at least 3 years. You're not going to see a Last of Us 2 next Christmas. Do you know what I mean? Like, it'll be like Uncharted will be few and far between, which that I'm okay with. That's what I was talking about a couple episodes back about Assassin's Creed, where I wish they would take a year off. But it's like every year, it's the same thing.
I got one last question for you guys. Chadwick, who's part of the Retro Junkies Network, and basically huge supporters of us, sent me an internet vid of him talking in about the internet era. And he talks about back in the day how companies had to get the games right the first time. There's, is the gaming experience and our games better or worse now because updates are possible? Are we too dependent on the internet for our contemporary gaming needs? What do you guys think about that?
Absolutely, yeah.
So games were better back then when we didn't have to have updates and stuff like that because companies had to get them right the first time, or are we too dependent on the internet for our gaming needs?
As far as fixing,
you look at something like
that,
Titanfall, right? That
yeah.
Well, it's both things, right? When a company shipped a game pre-internet era, it had to be right. It was on a physical cart. There was no updates. It was done. Now they can release it and patch it.
Exactly.
Is that good or bad?
I think it's both.
Do tell Glenn the truth.
I don't like the aspect of it let's release it because we have to release it or we're on the schedule and then let's fix it later. And that's something that's plagued PC game development for ages. Like there's tons of PC games that have launched notoriously and just been in a completely unfinished state and then they fix it with a patch or an update later on. On the other hand, every game has bugs, and I think the notion that you can fix those bugs after the fact with a console game now is nice when those bugs are particularly damaging or potentially game breaking. And I don't think that's not on the fault of the developers for being lazy or anything, but I mean literally every game has bugs, and I think it's interesting that you can fix those now. And the other thing I like about it is that you have the potential for getting extra content for that game, so you don't play through every little thing on the disc or the cartridge and get to the end and there's nothing left. You can get things like DLC or extra levels or extra content, and I think that's a great benefit.
But them not testing games enough, knowing that they could just patch it later, is what irritates me. Look at the broken Battlefield 4 multiplayer. It's still broken.
Well, yeah, as you'll recall, I didn't argue against that.
I'm just saying, like, that's one thing that irritates me. It's like, don't use us as the beta testers. Test it yourself and then release it when it's good to go.
And don't lure us into pre-ordering a game so we can play it like on hour one. Don't lure us and say, oh, you got to pre-order this for extra content. And then when we get the pre-order version, because you sell out the first week and there's no other games for 2 weeks, have it essentially broken for that first shipment. I mean, that's brutal.
They're like, okay, we boast 128 player multiplayer matches. They boast this, and then they take them to the developers and say, oh yeah, this is what you got to do. And they're like, okay, and we have 5 months to do that? They're like, do it.
The other side of the other dark side of the internet being part of the gaming experience now is DRM, right? Like, like having copyright protection and things like of that nature, or having situations where you've got to be logged in order to actually access a game. And then you have clusters like that SimCity mess back when it launched last year.
Another EA server
where you can buy a game for $60 and still not actually be able to play it, and just yeah. So I mean, I think there are good things that can come out of it, but I mean, there's also bad things that come out of it too. I'm not trying to be wishy-washy, but I think it's true. I don't think it's all black or white there.
I 100% agree. I think there's good things on both sides. I do miss the days where it was just a single ship and this is what you got. And if developers wanted to release more content, you were getting a sequel because the public demanded enough with sales, and you knew a sequel was going to take a couple of years, but you knew that couple of years was going to be invested well, because if a game was broken, it was going to get returned and people were losing money. So I kind of like the idea of more stuff being on the line for developers to ensure quality for players. All right, we'll wrap this up then. This has been another episode of Gamercast with myself, Rob McCallum, Glenn Stanway producing.
Thanks very much, everybody. Keep listening.
And Jay Bartlett, the video game rockstar.
I love you guys. Cheers.